Welcome to Mission to Inspire, where we share life experiences in our careers, personal lives, society, culture, religion, finance, family, and much more. Meet your host, Shola Ajibade, as she takes you on a ride to fuel your inspiration.
Hi everyone. Welcome to Mission to Inspire. So on this episode, we're doing it with a little bit of twist. Our guest, his name is Chris Donaldson. And we've got a very, very, very interesting topic that we're talking about today. But before we go into the interview proper, let's get to know Chris. Hi, Chris. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So let's try to know you.
How long have you got?
I know you've traveled, well, far and wide. So these first few questions is around that topic.
Okay.
With a little bit of twist. So it's around what you like and what you like doing. So the first question, city or country?
I'm a city boy, really.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that why you travel a lot?
Yes, so I always want to live somewhere that I can walk to the pub. It's number one. I'm from Ireland, so it's a sort of genetic insistence, you know.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Okay. Let's crack on. Plane or yacht?
Oh, it has to be a yacht. I lived in a yacht in Dubai for 8 years. Until a couple of years ago, I was living out there and working out there, and we couldn't afford the price of property is huge for even to rent. So we were actually able to buy an old boat for the price of 2 years' rent. So it has to be yacht.
It has to be yacht. Oh my goodness! But I thought you built yourself a plane.
I did that as well, yes, but that was further longer ago. That was when I was very silly. So it's a difficult one. I like them both.
Okay, this time let's ask you about this: sea or land?
Well, it's got to be sea as well, then, isn't it, for the yacht? And also the plane I built was a seaplane, so it could land in the sea as well. So it covers both.
But you rode on a motorcycle. That was on the land.
I was in the land too. Yeah, well, I like to cover all aspects. I'm a jack of all trades.
Last question: motorcycle or car?
Well, it has to be a bike. It has to be a motorbike.
Yes, that is so correct.
As long as it's Italian.
Oh my goodness. You're welcome onto our show. So I'm gonna introduce Chris proper so that you all can know who he is, and then he's gonna dive into today's topic, and I'm just gonna leave the old stage for him. He's just gonna talk about himself and his journey. But before we do that, I'm just gonna do a short introduction. So Chris Donaldson, he is a 64-year-old from Belfast in Ireland. He actually said that a few minutes ago. And he is a best-selling author of Going the Wrong Way. He is one of the few who planned to travel the world. So amazingly so, he did on a motorcycle. Oh my God, he's the first I've ever met that's done that on a motorcycle, to be honest. But what could have possibly gone wrong, or what could have possibly gone right? I'll leave the stage for him to talk about that in a minute. But before we go into that, Chris, how can we actually buy your book? Because for viewers listening to your story, they might want to buy your book. So how can they purchase your book?
Well, it's available on paperback, ebook, and audiobook on Amazon, as you say, anywhere in the world. It's an amazing company. They print them, they develop them in all the different media. So it's available there. It's also available on my website, Chris Donaldson World.
Right.
ChrisDonaldson.world. But Amazon, the technology is amazing. They can print off books. They can deliver anywhere in the world practically. It's quite amazing.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'll be putting all that information, how you can purchase this book in the description
Yeah.
as well. Okay, thank you so much. So let's rewind to 1979. I think you would be about 20 years old then, if I'm
Yeah, I was
correct.
about 21. I was brought
21.
up in Belfast in the 70s, which was a pretty dodgy spot to be in. As we all know, it's 25 years since the Good Friday Agreement this week. But in the 70s and 80s, it was pretty, there's a lot of shooting and bombings going on. But it's funny, as a child, when we were being brought up, we didn't really notice anything much different because we didn't know any different. Kids are quite resilient. And even though we would look outside the school windows and see smoke going off from bombs going off in the city, it didn't actually impact me an awful lot until my parents' shop, the furniture shop, got blown up a few times, and you sort of think, this isn't actually a normal way to grow up. So I sort of got to my, after university, I decided time to get out of here. I think I need to see some parts of the world that don't have this sort of thing going on. So in my head, from when I was about 16, I wanted to go to Australia, and I decided to ride a motorbike there.
Right. Okay. Wow. That must have been so brave of you. I mean, what did your parents say at that young, tender age?
They weren't too pleased. They weren't too pleased, but they were very, very patient. I think they thought it would soon go out of my head. But it's just I wanted to challenge. I wanted to challenge myself. I wanted to get away from the sort of being with friends and family, all the influences that people have on you when you're growing up. I decided I wanted to go away on my own and have a challenge and see a bit of the world as well.
Okay.
So as I say, decided to go to Australia, spend time there, and maybe go to America and go around the world that way, and then come back and go to work, start work. I realized once you start work, once you get on the treadmill of rents, mortgages, families, it's very hard to stop again. You know, you need to, if you're going to get traveling, you need to do it before you start there.
It is. It's true. It's true. That's very true. So when you went on this journey to Australia, what happened on your journey? What were the challenges and
Well,
the
it went wrong very quickly. I left in October 79, and I got to London, and I was having a good time in London, seeing old friends and getting my visas and my insurance and everything for going through Asia.
Okay.
My guidebooks. And then the Ayatollah Khomeini decided to take over the American embassy in Tehran, and the Islamic Revolution started, which basically cut off all roads east. So I had the choice of either going home after telling all my friends I was going to Australia, coming back 2 weeks later, or else finding somewhere else to go. So I decided to go to South Africa because it was coming into winter in Europe, and I had to get somewhere warmer. So it was pretty basic. It was before the internet age, obviously. So you got your information from books or maps, which all my planning is for going to the east. So I had no idea what was in South Africa or down that direction. So I went from being quite well organized to being totally disorganized and chaotic, not knowing where I was going. So I ended up, it started off in London, as I say, and then went south down to Greece. A boat to Egypt wasn't running, so we took a boat to Israel instead, thinking, well, that's beside Egypt, so we should be able to drive across. But of course, they were still not talking to each other. They wouldn't let us over the border or into Jordan. Israel was cut off, so we went back to Cyprus and then across. I planned to go on roads, obviously, there's roads all the way to India. I hadn't planned on going on dirt tracks and just sand. So that was probably one of the hardest weeks of my life, is actually crossing the desert. I suppose where the start really the challenge came from took about a week to cross 300 miles. Some days we'd only do 10 miles a day, pushing and digging and crossing in a convoy. So I went down through Sudan, which is mainly dirt roads, hardly any tarmac roads. It took about a month to get through the country, down to Uganda, which is more problems because Idi Amin had just been ousted by the Tanzanian army, who hadn't been paid for 6 months, so they weren't happy to see people. So eventually, through Uganda to Kenya and then down to South Africa, which was a bit of a dead end because in the middle of apartheid in the 80s, so I couldn't get out again. There's very few flights or boats would stop off there, but I managed to get a job in a yacht race coming through from Jakarta up to Rotterdam. And even though I had no experience of sailing, I got a job on an ocean-going yacht. So it took 5 weeks to get back again. So the experience of sort of going all the way to South Africa over land and back over this by sea. Then the shipping company who was sponsoring the race, Netllloyd, they shipped my bike to the States. And I went to Los Angeles and then up to Canada, across Canada, and then down through the States, down all the way to Argentina, where I, got a long story short, ran out of money, got hepatitis, and I was lucky to get myself and managed to get some money sent over and get shipped home again. So it took about a year and a half, 2 years, little journey. And I never got to Australia, ended up in Argentina.
Oh my goodness, you never got to Australia. Wow.
Basically went there practically everywhere else in the world apart from the East. But it was a fantastic journey because it's a very unusual way to travel when you don't actually have a destination to go to. 99% of the time you're traveling, you're going somewhere. Whereas I wasn't actually going anywhere particular. It was just traveling for the sake of traveling. And that's partly where the beauty of the magic of the trip was, because it wasn't actually going anywhere, just going, living by the day by day, and seeing where I would end up that night. In fact, in Africa, south of Sudan, I actually drove off the edge of my map. I didn't actually know what was below, what was further south, until I met another guy coming up north who gave me his, he was on a motorbike as well, and we exchanged maps. He gave me his Southern Africa maps, and I gave him my Northern Africa map.
Oh my God.
Off the edge of the world, you know.
Interesting. But then on the motorbike, how did you fuel the motorbike? Because you were going in deserts.
What's that, sorry?
How did you fuel your motorbike? How did you get petrol, diesel? How did you fuel it? How did you get gas in there?
Sure. Yeah, well, that was a problem in the likes of Sudan. Ironically, it's sitting on top of billions of gallons of oil. They didn't have any gas, any petrol at the time. So at one stage I had to take a train, put the bike on the train and ship it on the train, which is heavy going as well, because the trains are very archaic and slow. Travel about 20 miles an hour through some very poor regions of Africa, where it was difficult to even get something to drink. Sometimes days you were happy to get a mug of dirty water to drink. So you're very living very basically with the natives, with the local Africans, eating basic foods, living in the shacks and so on. I managed to get some petrol to cross the next part of the trip to Juba, but from then on I had to put the bike on a truck across Uganda, as I said, which was quite exciting because the truck got stopped by the local paramilitaries who wanted everybody off the truck, wanted to go through our luggage for whatever, looking for money basically. So we got through that, and then the truck broke down. So I was stuck in Uganda for a week until we found some petrol there. And it really was a matter of scrounging petrol wherever we could get a few gallons here and there, you know.
Wow.
So it was a very challenging time, and one of the more I suppose times that I was able to get inspiration from in the future, because I realized if you're going to get on, I had to sort it out myself. There was nobody else to turn to. You couldn't phone home. There was no internet, no technology to get help. So I had to get out of any trouble I got into. I had to get out of it myself. So it was a good sort of education for good life lessons to learn.
Right. Your parents must have been scared to death.
Yeah, it was a bit scary at that stage. But not knowing, ignorance is a great thing sometimes, not knowing where you were going. I mean, I wouldn't have gone to Uganda if I'd known what it was like. But actually, I got a lot out of the journey there because I met some really nice people. Sometimes more stressful places that you are, the people brings out the best in people. People are more helpful. Difficult areas than they are normally.
Wow. Wow. Oh, well, I can only say that at that age, though, we are always very willing to take risk.
Well,
So
the problems these days, I think, is that we're this life now, or the sort of civilization now is very risk adverse. I think everybody, health and safety conscious, and all this sort of thing.
Exactly.
But it sort of takes the fun out of life a little bit. Sometimes you'll have to take risks to go into the unknown to get adventure. And it's hard with the internet. Everybody knows if you want to find out about a country or a city or anything, you just Google it. And now with artificial intelligence, it's so easy to find out information about anything at all in the world.
That's true.
You know where you're going. You can book your hotels online. You can get your prices. You can find out where the petrol stations are and everything, which is brilliant. You know, the technology to find your way you're across the city like London or Johannesburg without knowing where you are. It's all on your phone. 30, 40 years, the technology, it's a space age, what you can do now that you didn't think you could do before, you know?
That's very true. That's very true. With technology, we could do so many things. With technology, you could have actually researched where you're going, know how long it will take you, know all the routes you would have to take before you get there.
So yeah, my problem was I didn't even have a guidebook. You know, in those days you used a guidebook, which would have been handy. But as I say, it was part of the magic of the trip was not knowing where I was going as much and not being interested because it was really just traveling for the sake of it. It was a discovery of myself rather than going to a destination, which is a bit like life, really. I mean, life is a journey, and the destination is the end. It's death. At the end of your journey is death. So whenever I got to Cape Town, it was actually a disappointment in a way because it's a beautiful city. It was great to be there. It was the end of the challenge, but it was quite depressing because that was the end of that section of the journey. So it was quite confusing for me at the time because I couldn't understand why I thought it would be ecstatic to get there. And at times, whenever I was having a really hard time, I was looking forward to, oh, it'll be fine when I can't wait to get to Cape Town and have a beer and relax, whatever. But whenever I did actually get there, it was disappointment because the trip was over, you know. So when I got back, I started writing a book, and then like 99% of most people gave up. Somebody had just done a similar journey and written a book about it. So I sort of thought, well, if somebody's done that, no point in me doing it again. So I gave up my notes, and then 40 years later, I decided I would put pen to paper, hit the keyboards. Luckily, by this time, spell check had been discovered, had been invented, so easier to write a book. I was never very intellectual at school, not very academic, and it was a great challenge for me to write a book and find it be a bestseller on Amazon. It's over 1,000 5-star reviews. It's an inspiration, should be an inspiration for anybody that if I can write a book, anybody can write a book. You know, I think my school friends would have told you that my English teacher would have a heart attack if he thought that I was ending up writing a book. So it was quite a challenge to follow on to do that, which was published about 3 years ago. And since then, it has changed quite a few things in my life because one of my friends read the book and said, well, you never actually got to Australia. Why not have another go? So last year, just after COVID, I still had the same motorbike and never sold it. So we fixed up the motorbike. He bought a new one, and the two of us left to go to Australia in 2 weeks. One of the problems was I now have a family and a job, and I'm self-employed. So we did 2 weeks on, 2 months off. We'd leave our bikes and come back to work, and go back out again 2-3 months later and continue on. So went down to Athens, over to Israel, back to Athens, because there's deja vu. I couldn't get out of Israel again. Didn't have the right paperwork or something. Went through Iran, finally got through Iran, had a wonderful time there, and then went to Dubai. And then the next stage was Dubai to Pakistan, and then on through India to Nepal. So I finally made it to Australia 43 years later, 43 years after I left Belfast in 1979. And I got a great welcome with some of the motorcycle clubs there. So if you don't succeed, just leave it for a couple of years and try again. So the culmination of the story is for 43 years later. I suppose one of the original trip was 21, so it was sort of coming of age. It's more of a coming of age story rather than a motorcycle story. It's very little about motorbikes really. It's more about coming to age, coming to know myself and learning how to overcome obstacles.
Yes.
See, learning from other people as well, and seeing the various countries and cultures. So last year was really a coming of old age story. Because now coming out of finishing my working life as such and hoping to have a retirement, and I discovered a new term. It's called the third age. Apparently, somebody told me last week that the first age is when you're until you start work. The second age is whenever your working life, 20 to 60, 65, and then your third age is supposed to be the best whenever you've got lots of money and lots of time in your hands. It hasn't quite worked out like that for me so far, but but I think it's important to keep challenging yourself. And I suppose one of the reasons I did it was I wanted to see if I could still do what I could do when I was 21 on the motorbike, and travel the same way, and put myself enough brain power and mental and physical power to do that. So I was pleased that I was able to complete the course, and in fact get to Australia, which I didn't actually do when I was 21. So I'm a bit smarter, a bit more financially well off, but not quite as fit.
So you got to Australia?
I got to Australia eventually. Since I 2 years and a half.
How many years after?
43 years later.
43 years later. Oh my God. Oh well. So no matter what we want to do, even if we try the first time, we keep trying until we.
Yeah, I mean, it's never give up. And through my business life, I've gone through various difficulties through my business life. 12 years ago, I got made bankrupt by the banks after the property crash. They basically stole my business from me.
Oh.
I ended up self-litigating against them because they couldn't afford a lawyer, and I've successfully got my businesses back and sued them, got some compensation as well in the end. So, so during that period, I realized that what I'd learned about it in going through Africa, going through South America, was when you get to a stage, you get so used to people helping you in life, whether you're sick and you get a doctor, or you run out of money, you get an account, you go to the bank. Whenever your back's to the wall, you've nobody else to talk to. You have to learn how to do these things yourself. And was able to, as I say, to learn how to litigate, to go back to get the law books out and learn how to go to court myself and stand up in front of a judge to present my case. Because it's interesting, if you're a criminal, if you're a thief or a car raider or a murderer, you can get legal aid, you get free legal help. But if you're actually in business and you're taken over, somebody does something to you other than a criminal action, you have to pay for it yourself. And if you don't have any money, effectively you're up against a very hard time, because you've got legal trained lawyers, barristers and so on. Its job it is to put people like you put you, well, not put you away, but make you bankrupt.
Hmm.
So I was able to sort of use my inner reserves, I suppose, to fight back and be successful there, you know.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. What a very interesting journey. And actually, you actually acquired some skills traveling.
Yeah, I think so. I gained a lot of confidence, I suppose. I was probably quite shy and lacking confidence at school and so on. So it's the same thing. Forced to do things for yourself. It's a great way to learn how to do it.
Yes.
Read books, you can go to classes, but until you're actually out there doing it yourself,
That's true.
it's maybe like traveling. If somebody drives you across a new town, you don't really notice where you're going. You couldn't do it. You couldn't drive home yourself. But if you drive across a new town yourself, you'll know the way. You know the it's the signs along the way. You'll be able to do it again. You know, brain's funny. You have to sometimes do things yourself before you learn how to do it. You know.
That's very true. Thank you so much for coming on our show. And before I even ask you anything, you've already answered all the questions. So there's no more questions to ask.
Must be something. Don't tell me you're speechless.
You say everything, though. And even the inspirational advice I wanted to ask you, you've already given us the inspirational advice, but I don't know if there's any more that you want to give.
I don't know. I don't think so. It's been, I don't know what. Well, give me a clue. What sort of advice? What sort of? You've got a lot of motivation and inspiration as your topics of conversation. I noticed in previous pods. As I said, it's probably answered most of that. I think motivation is probably one of the hardest things in this day and age too, to get off your butt and do things, as you say. I think COVID's been quite difficult for people because we've been stuck inside so much and told you can't do this, you can't do that. People have got out of the way of getting out there and going to see the world or going and doing things. We've got very computer orientated, and people live by the screen now rather than going out and doing it for themselves. But I'm starting to sound like an old man, like my dad. Wasn't like that in our day. But I suppose that's one of the things about getting older. You tend to look back in the past as being the best of times, and that's so weird now. But yeah, there's a lot of advantages these days, but a lot of disadvantages too. True,
very true. Thank you so much for coming on our show, and we really appreciate you. That is it on Mission to Inspire today. Thank you so much, Chris. We really appreciate you coming. Thank you for all the inspiration, the motivational advice. Has anybody told you that you are an expert public speaker? Because
because it made you speechless.
Because before I even ask you the question, you've already said, it's as if you already know, or you already knew what I was going to ask. So
you shouldn't have looked at your other podcasts.
Thank you so much for coming on our show. And until next time, please subscribe and listen and like and share our video. Thank you.
And don't forget to buy my book.
Yes! Don't forget to buy Chris' book.
Don't go the wrong way on Amazon. Thank you very much.
Yes, can you tell us what's the title of your book again?
Going the Wrong Way.
Going the Wrong Way, and we can get it from Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the link and where you can get it, where we can all get it, I'll put that in the note show, as well as the description. So please check that book out. I'm sure it's going to inspire you. And it's
Hope
going to
so.
motivate you as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for joining us today on Mission to Inspire. Subscribe if you have not already done so. Like, comment, leave a message. Let's stay connected. Let's jointly inspire the world.